So let's start now. So we are starting the topic preoperative care, including the high-risk surgical patient. Only MCQ purpose, na?
Yes.
In the first phase, there is nothing MCQ, huh? There is only the first line. The stress of major surgery can lead to increased oxygen demand by 40%. That 40% can be asked. Baki patient assessment, history taking, that part is not so important. Even examination, this first two pages is not so important. Come to the third page. This examination, this is also theoretical, not MCQ. So examination specific to surgery. Here, this is a nice guidelines. The investigations preoperatively we have to do. So this may ask. So we have to remember full blood count, urea and electrolytes, electrocardiography, ECG, chest X-ray, then plotting screen, then urinalysis, beta HCG, blood glucose, HbA1c, arterial blood gases, liver function test. But this sickle cell test is in the first full blood count. The sickle cell anemia is more common in Afro-Caribbean and Indian subcontinent. Just to remember. And urea and electrolytes are needed before all major operations. For all operations, all preoperative cases, we have to do urea and electrolytes. Then ECG is required for those only for over 65 years of age, and those who are symptomatic with a history of rheumatic fever, not for all. ECG is required only for those patients who more than 65 years of age with and symptomatic. Then chest X-ray is not required for all. In the respiratory individual systems, respiratory disease also, they mentioned that chest X-ray is required for lung cancer, metastasis, then emphysematous bulla and pleural effusions. Here they have said acute pulmonary symptoms, acute respiratory symptoms in patients with cardiac failure and COPD. So we should remember lung cancer, metastasis, pleural effusion, then emphysematous bulla. These are known cases of lung cancer, known case of metastasis, known case of pleural effusions, and cardiac failure, COPD, and acute respiratory symptoms. We have to go for chest X-ray. Then clotting screen is not that important. Just to remember, urinalysis should be performed on all patients. We have to go for urine RE on all patients. Beta HCG is done for women of childbearing age. And we have to take a consent before obtaining beta HCG. Then blood glucose and HbA1c to be done for all patients. Arterial blood gas, just remember, liver function test, just remember. So next comes to specific system-wise preoperative assessment. So cardiovascular disease. So here they are first we have to identify patients who are at high risk of developing MACE, MACE, that is major adverse cardiovascular events. Who are the MACE, MACE? It includes MI, ischemic heart disease, congestive cardiac failure, arrhythmias, and peripheral vascular disease. Then they are saying about the ischemic heart patient with ischemic heart disease. We need to do a stress test. It may be a stress echo, stress ECG, or myocardial scintigraphy, and If stress test is negative, then there is very less, they are unlikely to have ischemic heart disease. So ischemic heart disease যদি থাকে, then we have to go for stress test. Then if stress test is negative, they are not likely to develop ischemic heart disease post-operatively. If it is present, then we have to go for a coronary angiography. Then they are saying about if the patient is having a valvular heart disease, then we have to go for echo. And ejection fraction of less than 30% is associated with poor outcomes. So ejection fraction, it is maybe asked. And when to refer a patient to cardiologist? Clinically, if you got a murmur and patient is symptomatic, then we should go refer to a cardiologist. Or X-ray express showing cardiomegaly, then we have to go refer to a cardiologist. When ECG is showing ischemic changes or rhythm abnormalities or rate abnormalities like bradycardia, tachycardia, we have to refer to a cardiologist. Next is they are saying hypertension, ischemic heart disease, and coronary stents. So regarding hypertension, preoperatively we have to maintain blood pressure. Preoperatively we have to maintain blood pressure at by 160 by 100. And if we use a new antihypertensive agent, then we should give a stabilization period of 2 weeks. That is important. Next is regarding ischemic heart disease. Here they are telling that it may present with angina or it may present with MI. So if the patient present with angina and patient is not well controlled, patient is developing on and off angina, then we have to refer to the cardiologist, and patient may need interventions, and that will be the indications will be similar to that of a patient who don't need any surgery. And they're saying that if the patient had MI, we should postpone surgery by 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Why 6 months? Because patient had MI, probably had percutaneous coronary intervention with stenting, and in patients with stenting, we give dual antiplatelet therapy. And depending upon the stents, we give dual antiplatelet therapy. For drug-eluting stents, we give it for 12 months, and for bare metal stents, we give it for 6 weeks. So now there are newer drug-eluting stents are there, which allows a DAPT for 6 months. So that's why we should give go for elective surgery after MI after 6 months of completing dual antiplatelet therapy. And they are saying beta blockers and statins, we should continue beta blockers and statins perioperatively, whereas ACE inhibitors like captopril, ARBs, telmisartan, we have to stop 24 hours before the surgery. ठीक है ना प्रेम?
Okay, nice. Continue.
So now, if we give dual antiplatelet therapy, there is a risk of bleeding, and if we stop dual antiplatelet therapy, there is a risk of stent thrombosis. So whenever possible, we should delay elective surgery, that is after completion of dual antiplatelet therapy. Suppose we cannot delay, then depending upon the risk of bleeding, we should continue or we should stop. If there is low risk of bleeding, then we can continue this antiplatelet therapy. But if there is more risk of bleeding, then we have to stop. We have to stop this clopidogrel and ticagrelor according to Bailey. When there is a high risk, means when you can't stop, we have to when we have to go for an emergency surgery where we cannot when there is a high risk of bleeding, we have to stop clopidogrel and ticagrelor, but however we can continue aspirin. Next, come to arrhythmias. Here they are telling atrial fibrillation. When there is only atrial fibrillation, then there is a high risk of thrombosis because of atrial fibrillation, which may lead to thromboembolism. So patient will be on anticoagulant warfarin. So we have to stop warfarin 5 days before surgery, and INR should be less than equal to 1.5. Next page. INR should be less than 1.5, but whenever there is a means only atrial fibrillation is not a high risk for it's not a high risk indication for antiplatelet therapy. Means there is a high risk indication and low risk indication. So uncomplicated atrial fibrillation is a low risk indication for antiplatelet therapy. So we don't need a bridging therapy, or we don't need a alternate. When we stop the warfarin for 5 days, we don't need any alternate anticoagulation. We don't need any alternate anticoagulation. Whenever there is a high risk of stroke, suppose patient is having atrial fibrillation with a valvular heart disease or something, when there is a high risk of thromboembolism, so that becomes a high risk indication for continuing antiplatelet therapy. In those cases, if we stop warfarin, then we have to give an alternate anticoagulation. And here they are saying that we have to give bridging therapy with unfractionated heparin or low molecular weight heparin. Atrial fibrillation with a mechanical heart valve. When there is a atrial fibrillation with a mechanical heart valve, this is a high risk of stroke. Stroke means it's a high risk of thromboembolic phenomenon. There will be a high risk of thromboembolic phenomenon. Only atrial fibrillation, we don't go for bridging therapy. Atrial fibrillation with mechanical heart valve, we have to go for a bridging therapy. That is low molecular weight heparin or what you call low molecular weight heparin and unfractionated heparin. Next is testing about the pacemakers. For pacemakers, there is not much important MCQ, but they are saying that bipolar diathermy should be available at surgery, and because monopolar diathermy activity is the pacemaker is sensitive to the monopolar diathermy activity. So we have to change the mode of the pacemakers. So bipolar diathermy should be made available. And all this we have to need a cardiology consultation when the patient is having heart blocks. And they are saying about the valvular heart disease. So valvular heart disease, whenever there is a mechanical, this part is important. Whenever there is a mechanical valve, we need to, mechanical valve is a high risk indication for continuing anticoagulant. This is given in this. We can correlate this with the chapter endoscopy chapter, where there is thrombus prophylaxis is explained. So high risk indication, low risk indication. Presence of mechanical valve is a high risk indication for continuing anticoagulant. So whenever there is a mechanical valve, if we stop anticoagulant like warfarin for 5 days before surgery, then we need to give another alternate anticoagulant. That is, they're giving unfractionated heparin infusion to make the INR below 1.5. And they are saying that APTT should be monitored to keep it at 1.5 times the normal. And this infusion of unfractionated heparin to be stopped 2 hours before surgery. And here, in case of mechanical valves, we cannot use this thrombin inhibitors and factor Xa inhibitors. Now, I have missed something. This is also important, that they are saying that there are now new what we call NOAC, that is novel anticoagulants. These are direct inhibitors, direct factor 10A inhibitors, and factor direct thrombin inhibitors. Direct thrombin inhibitors are dabigatran, and direct factor 10A inhibitors are rivaroxaban, apixaban, and edoxaban. So they need to be, because they don't have any anticoagulant, and they must be stopped 3 days, 2 to 3 days, considering the renal function. If they have normal renal function, we can stop it 3 days. But if the renal function is impaired, then we have to stop even before. It is given in dysarrhythmia, under heading dysarrhythmia. Next, anemia and blood transfusion. In anemia and blood transfusion, just remember what are the indications of blood transfusion in general, given in chapter number 2. That is, whenever there is a acute blood loss, whenever there is chronic blood loss and patient is chronic anemia and patient is symptomatic and patient is undergoing any surgery. So here also chronic anemia is there and patient is undergoing a major procedure, then we need to give transfusions. There they are saying chronic anemia with symptomatic chronic anemia and undergoing surgery, even without bleeding also, we need to go for blood transfusion. Next comes to respiratory diseases. In respiratory diseases, the second paragraph is telling a preoperative X-ray or scan is useful in a patient with known emphysematous bulla, lung cancer, lung mets, and pulmonary effusions. So we don't use routine preoperative X-ray. We use generally in these 4 conditions. Then there is another 4 conditions they given in the next paragraph. Where if these 4 conditions are present, then there is high risk of pneumonia and respiratory failure. These are if a patient on steroid, if the patient is on oral steroid, if the patient is on oxygen therapy, if forced expiratory volume at 1 second per second is less than 30% of predicted, and PaCO2 level is greater than 6 kilopascals. Next is they are saying the patients who are at metered dose inhaler should continue those inhalers until the start of anesthesia. And they are saying about the smoking. So in this chapter, I don't get when to stop smoking, but it is 8 weeks, Anna? Prem?
6 weeks. 6 weeks. 6 weeks, no?
6
or 8?
weeks.
It's given in the last page of
It's 8 weeks, I think, huh?
8
Minimum 48 hours, but it should be preferably by 8 weeks.
Okay.
Next, whenever there is a
8 weeks only.
yes,
8 weeks.
yeah, 8 weeks, yes, 8 weeks. And next, they are telling about the whenever there is any acute pulmonary symptoms, then we need to postpone the surgery. Elective surgery we postpone until acute exacerbations are treated. Next, when to refer a respiratory physician. So just simply when the patient is having a severe pulmonary disease, when a patient is having pulmonary disease and plan for a major surgery, or when the patient is having heart failure, then we should refer the patient to a respiratory medicine specialist. Next, come to ZIT. In the ZIT, they are giving NBM, nil by mouth, when to miss 6 hours for solids and 2 hours for clear liquids. And it is to avoid acid aspiration syndrome. This is to avoid acid aspiration syndrome. But there are some certain patients where even if we follow this NBM protocol, there is increased risk of resuscitation. They're giving one is obesity, when the patient is obese. Second paragraph, or second resuscitation risk. When a patient is obese, when the patient is pregnant, diabetes, in those patients, there is a risk of resuscitation. Even if we follow this nil by mouth protocol, So for them, we have to give antacids or PPIs or H2 blockers. And if the surgery is delayed, this simply we can means anytime we can allow the patient to have clear fluids 2 hours before surgery. Then in the liver disease, there is not much thing in the liver disease. Liver disease, mainly they have a problem of coagulopathy, encephalopathy, renal problems, but nothing preoperatively mentioned here. And whenever there is a cholangitis, we have to postpone elective surgery. Cholangitis, we have to postpone elective surgeries. In genital renal disease, they are saying in one paragraph they are saying about the chronic kidney disease, and last paragraph they are saying about the acute kidney injury. So the hypertension, diabetes, ischemic heart disease can lead to chronic kidney disease. So we have to diagnose chronic kidney disease before elective surgery. And if the patient is having metabolic acidosis, hypocalcemia, hyperkalemia of more than 6, then we have to treat. This is a medical thing. And whenever there is AKI, it is usually associated with the surgical acute surgical condition. So we have to medically manage AKI. And whenever there is because in all patients, we should routinely undergo urinary. So if the patient is the patient develop UTI preoperatively, then we have to give prophylactic, we have to give treatment, therapeutic treatment for UTI before surgery. Next is endocrine and metabolic disorders. For this, we need to know about the BMI. So normal BMI is 18.5 to 24.9, and 25 to 30 is 25 to 29.9 is overweight. Then 30 to 34.9 is class 1 obese. Then 30 to 34.9 is class 1 obese. Then 35 to 39.9 is class 2 obese, and 40 or above is class 3 obesity. So this is given in bariatric surgery, that chapter. Now below 18.5, we know it's a malnutrition. So here they are giving the BMI. Next, BMI less than 18.5, nutritional impairments or simply malnutrition. But BMI below 15 is associated with significant hospital mortality. Next, they are saying about the morbid obesity. So morbid obesity, they are defined as BMI of more than 35. BMI of more than 35. We know that obesity is associated with regurgitation, aspiration. Now they are saying obesity is associated with sleep apnea, and also obesity is associated with, in the last paragraph, under obesity is DVT. So so DVT karne we have to give prophylactic measures for DVT. So obesity, aspiration, regurgitation, aspiration, then obesity, sleep apnea, obesity, DVT. So for sleep apnea, they are saying there is a scoring system. There is PSEP, there is preoperative sleep apnea prediction score. So for that, they are saying for 6 weeks, for more than 6 weeks, CPAP, continuous positive air pressure, and cholesterol reducing agents can reduce the sleep apnea. And for DVT, we have to take prophylactic antibiotics. Then next is diabetes mellitus. In diabetes mellitus, they are saying that we have to measure the HbA1c. HbA1c, to know about the control of diabetes, we have to measure the HbA1c, and it should be less than 69 millimole per mole. Along with lipid lowering medications should be started. And you have to remember, if the diabetic patient should be kept on first in the OT list. Next paragraph. And if the OT is in the morning, then what will be the breakfast insulin and OHA status? If it is in the morning, you skip the breakfast, don't give insulin, don't give OHA. If it is in the evening, you can give breakfast, you can give half the dose of insulin, and we can give OHA full dose. And 2 hourly we have to monitor blood sugar. Nothing much for adrenocortical suppression. Next is thrombocoagulation disorders, thrombophilia. So they are saying that in a patient with family history of thrombosis or personal history of thrombosis, we should give thromboprophylaxis. Next stage, they are telling estrogen is responsible for venous thrombosis. So any oral contraceptive pills containing estrogen or hormone replacement therapy should be stopped 4 weeks before surgery, but OCPs containing only progesterone or means on the contraceptives containing only progesterone can be continued. Next, we are saying this is important. The risk factors for thrombosis, this list is important. So I just remember the first three these values 3, 30, 90, 60. So 3 days, more than 3 days immobilization is a risk factor. Then 30 is more than 30 BMI is a risk factor. 60 is more than 60 years is a risk factor. And 90 is 90 minutes. Anesthesia more than 90 minutes is a risk factor. Then PPP, just remember PPP, that is pregnancy, purpurium, and phlebitis. Only phlebitis is not risk factor. Varicose vein, only varicose vein is not risk factor. Varicose vein with thrombophlebitis should be there. And already we know the personal history, family history is a risk factor. Already we know oral contraceptive pills containing estrogen, hormone replacement therapy is a risk factor. Just remember smoking and cancer is a risk factor. Known cancer or cancer on treatment is a risk factors. These are risk factors for thrombosis. This is asked. Next, they are saying that anyone who is having a low risk of thromboembolism and anyone who is having a high risk of thromboembolism. For low risk, we are only giving stockings. That is mechanical prophylaxis we are giving. But high risk, we have to give pharmacological prophylaxis. That is, we have to give low molecular weight heparin or factor 10A inhibitors. Next is neurological and psychiatric disorders. Neurological disorders or psychiatric disorders. They are saying stroke. Those patients on stroke are usually on antiplatelet or anticoagulant. So depending upon the risk of thrombosis, we know whenever antiplatelet or anticoagulant is stopped, there is risk of thrombosis. When the risk of thrombosis is less, then we can stop this antiplatelet and anticoagulant. This aspirin can be stopped for 7 days and clopidogrel can be stopped for 10 days. 7 days for aspirin, 10 for clopidogrel. And whenever the risk of thrombosis is high, then you continue the aspirin. Next, they are saying anticonvulsant and anti-epileptic drugs and anti-Parkinson's drugs should be continued. And this is important, lithium to be stopped 24 hours prior. Then they are saying simply tricyclic antidepressants and MAO inhibitors. We have to inform the anesthesia. Next page. ठीक है ना? Hello.
Yes.
Listening ना?
Yes, bro.
Next, musculoskeletal disorders. So just to remember, in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, they are saying we have to go for a extra cervical spine, lateral view, and it is both in flexion as well as extension we have to take. The third line in musculoskeletal disorders, flexion and extension lateral cervical spine radiographs should be obtained in symptomatic patients. So it can lead to unstable cervical spine with possibility of spinal cord injuries in intubations. Nothing is important here. For airway assessment, next. For airway assessment, they are saying that 4 things they have examined. One is full mouth opening, that is given by modified Mallampati grading, that is Samson and Young. Samson and Young's modified Mallampati grading. Next, they are saying jaw protrusion, neck movement, and thyromental distance. Here they are saying in the next page, they are saying about the Mallampati grading. So grade 1, we have to remember fosses, that is the posterior pharyngeal wall. Fosses is visible, pillars are visible, soft palate and uvula are visible. Everything is visible. In grade 2, pillars are not visible. Rest are visible. And third is soft palate, fourth is hard palate. Next is assessment of high risk patient. This preoperative assessment in emergency surgery is nothing is important there. This Mallampati grading is important. The assessment of high risk patient. So, how to know who are the high risk patients? Means patients who are having a high risk of post-op mortality, morbidity are considered as high risk. So the patients who are having a high risk of post-op mortality as well as morbidity. And regarding mortality, they are saying that any patient who have a predicted mortality of more than 5% is high risk. This is asked more than 5%. Any patient who have a predicted mortality of more than 5% is high risk. And they are saying that 80% of the post-op mortalities are occurring in high-risk patients. So this 5%, if you remember, whenever there is mortality of more than 5%, that patient is considered to be high risk. Why these patients will having a high risk of death? Because they need a high oxygen demand. They have a high oxygen demand, and normally the patients, they meet this high oxygen demand by increasing the cardiac output. So they increase the cardiac output. They normally they increase the cardiac output, they meet this demand. But whenever there is a cardiopulmonary disease, the one who have a limited cardiopulmonary reserve, they cannot meet this oxygen demand. And on top of that, when there is a blood loss, when there is fluid shift, so there will be less oxygen delivery to the tissues. So who are the factors that contributes to this high risk of mortality? So they have a every patient factors contributing to risk. So patient factors are there, and type of surgery also contributes to the risk of mortality. The patient factors are, they are saying that elderly patient with elderly patient, but elderly patient is not an independent risk factor. Elderly patient with a limited reserve is a risk factor, and they are saying why they are high risk, because they have more chance of comorbidities, and they undergo 4 times more surgery than a normal population. They require surgery 4 times as often as the rest of the population. So this third is important. Patient factors that predisposes to high risk morbidity, mortality. So one of the factors we know that old age, that is more than 70 years with limited physiological reserve in one or more vital organs. Next, we should know the acute abdomen. Patient with peritonitis with hemodynamic instability is predisposed to high risk mortality. We can remember acute blood loss, massive blood loss of more than 8 units. We can remember septicemia. We can remember with there is positive blood cultures or septic focus. This is easy to remember. And last, we have to remember respiratory failure and acute renal failure. And we also know we also have to remember this first severe cardiorespiratory illness. There's acute MI, COPD, stroke. these parameters we have to remember: respiratory failure this much, PaO2 of less than 8, FiO2 of more than 0.4, and means failure to reverse or failure to remove the patient from a mechanical ventilation of more than 48 hours. Mechanical ventilation more than 48 hours is also a also termed as a respiratory failure. Next, we have to remember the surgeries. Patient factors will contribute to post-op mortality, morbidity. Also, the type of surgeries also contribute to post-op morbidity, mortality. So, this table 17.6 table number, we have a high risk means more than 5% cardiac risk, 1 to 5%, more than 5%, 1 to 5%, less than 1%. Remember the high risk and remember the low risk. Anything comes will be intermediate risk. High risk, we have to remember that is any emergency surgeries, urgent body cavity surgeries, then major vascular surgeries, two vascular surgeries, rest of vascular, open aortic surgeries, major vascular surgeries, peripheral vascular surgeries. Then low risk surgeries are mainly surgeries done in superficial organs like breast, thyroid, eye, then skin, this reconstructive surgery, skin, then dental surgeries we have to remember, and minor OTs like minor orthopedic OTs, minor urology OTs. This gynecology we have to remember. So low risk just remember, and high risk remember. Anything comes will be intermediate risk. Here intermediate risk we have the neurosurgeries, then major urology surgeries, hygienic surgeries. This 17.7 is not to remember. It's difficult and not as. Next is identification of high risk patient. Management of risk is no such important things they have mentioned in management of risk. Identification of high risk patient is important. They are given a number of scoring systems to identify high risk patients. So they may ask. So these scoring systems there are certain scores which can predict mortality. There are certain scores which can predict morbidity, and certain scores require OT information. Certain scores don't require OT informations. So we have to remember like ASA Apache 2, which don't require OT informations and can predict both mortality, morbidity. So we have to remember this chart. 17.8. But most important is ASA, American Society of Anesthesiology System, ASA. What is the ASA grading? So ASA also give you 30-day mortality. So an ASA is grade 1 to grade 5. Grade 1 is healthy, and grade 5 is moribund patient, unlikely to survive 24 hours without operation. So, and this grade 4 is most commonly asked. This is severe systemic disease. There is no moderate systemic disease. There is 2, 3, 4 is mild systemic disease. 3 and 4 are severe systemic disease. There is no moderate systemic disease. And 4 is a constant threat to life. And 2 and 3 is differentiated by functional limitations. With functional limitation, it becomes 3. And E for emergency OT. E denotes emergency OT. And we have a 30-day mortality. So we have to remember this data: 0.1, 0.7, 3.5, 18.3, 93.3. Next is important is metabolic equivalent tasks. So metabolic equivalent task, what is MET? MET is oxygen consumption by a 40-year-old man of 70 kg weight at rest. So this oxygen consumption will be different for different tasks. So we have different for different tasks we have different METs. So one MET is required for eating and racing. Then 4 METs is climbing 2 flights of stairs. 6 METs for short run, and more than 10 METs are required for anyone who able to participate. Any strenuous sport requires more than 10 METs. So So any person, any person, a patient who can perform a task of more than 4 MBTs is suitable candidate for a major surgery. Means they have a low risk of perioperative mortality. The patient with a patient who can perform a task with with 4 MBTs, that is more than 4 MBTs, that is 4 times the oxygen consumption at rest. If we perform a task of by using 4 times the oxygen, 4 times the oxygen consumption at rest, then he is suitable for major surgeries. So this is we identify high risk patient. So he is not the high risk patient. More than 4 MBTs. There are other indexes. There is Goldman cardiac risk index, and there is a revised cardiac risk index. Then revised cardiac risk index, we have to remember, because we have 6 factors, we have 6 risk factors, and risk of cardiac complications will become more than 10 if there is 11 if 3 factors are positive. If 3 factors are positive, it becomes more than 10. So it may be asked by giving a clinical scenario, it may be asked. So here we have 3 histories: history of ischemic heart disease, history of heart failure, history of CVA, and diabetes, renal insufficiency, and high risk surgeries. So device cardiac risk index, then ASA, metabolic equivalent task. These all 3 are very important. Next is POSAM score. We know here that POSAM score can predict both mortality as well as morbidity, and it requires operative intervention. So it can detect post-op mortality and morbidity because it requires operative information. So POSAM score, the full name of POSAM score is important. It is physiologic and operative severity score for the enumeration of mortality and morbidity. So they may give this, and they may ask the full form POSAM score. Then cardiopulmonary exercise testing. Here, what they do, they measure the oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production. They will make the patient to exercise for 10 minutes, and it will increase in an increment. On increment, they will increase the exercise, and they will measure the carbon dioxide and they consume carbon dioxide production and oxygen consumption. What is the principle? Whenever you make the patient to exercise, there is increased oxygen demand. Whenever there is whenever oxygen delivery of oxygen becomes inadequate to tissues because of the exercise, there is anaerobic respiration occurs in the tissues, and they will produce lactic acid. And lactic acid is buffered by bicarbonate, resulting in production of carbon dioxide and water. So there is excess of carbon dioxide production in proportion to oxygen consumption. So that point is known as the anaerobic threshold. If they are saying 80, what is 80? 80 is the anaerobic threshold. Means it is the oxygen consumption at which there is more oxygen, more carbon dioxide production. Anaerobic threshold is the oxygen consumption at which there is more carbon dioxide production. And they are saying that next page. And they are saying that whenever this 80 is less than 11, and whenever 80 becomes whenever this threshold becomes less than 11, means when the oxygen consumption is less than 11 and VO2, that is peak oxygen consumption, becomes less than 15, then will be a high risk for mortality and morbidity. These values they are asked. Means 80 more than 11 means whenever AT is more than 11 and VO2, that is oxygen consumption, is less than 15, it's a high risk for morbidity, mortality. So means there is in exercise, there will be more oxygen consumption. Sorry, in exercise, there will be more less oxygen consumption and there will be more carbon dioxide production at oxygen consumption. When there is more carbon dioxide production occurs, there is the anaerobic threshold. And whenever the anaerobic threshold is more, and it is more than 11, and peak oxygen consumption is less, then there is a high risk for morbidity and mortality after surgery. So they may ask this also, the CPET, this cardiopulmonary exercise test. There are other simple walk tests like 6-minute walk test or incremental subtle walk test. So they will give this short form and they will ask you. So answer will be CPET only. Then optimization of high risk patients. Now optimization of high risk patient, there is nothing much. Optimization of high risk patient, they are saying about, first is they are saying about the ischemic heart disease. We all know ischemic heart disease, that we have to defer the surgery or we have to postpone the surgery for 3 to 6 months after MI. 3 to 6 months after MI. And we before surgery, we may go for revascularization. Before surgery, we may go for CABG. We may go for percutaneous coronary interventions. Those are they are saying. Then myocardial ischemia. Nothing much is there to learn. And in cardiac failure, they are saying that whenever there is an ejection fraction, whenever there is a less than 35%, there is high risk of the patient will be at highest risk, and we can use beta blockers and ACE inhibitors. Beta blockers and ACE inhibitors can be used, but ACE inhibitors cannot be used when there is a bilateral renal stenosis. Only in cardiac failure they are saying that we can use beta ACE inhibitors. Normally ACE inhibitors are stopped before 24 hours. This is medical thing actually. Respiratory failure, we already know the definition of respiratory failure that is given in this one. In the patient factors, that is patient factors in RF, that is PO2 of less than 8 kilopascals, FiO2 of more than 0.4, mechanical ventilation of more than 48 hours. There is the same thing they are given here. PO2 less than 8 kilopascals, PO2 FiO2 is less than 40, that is 0.4, and inability to extubate the patient for more than 48 hours. This is the definition of acute respiratory failure. And here the mortality is 40%. When a patient develops respiratory failure, there is mortality is 40%. In respiratory failure, they have said one thing about respiratory lower respiratory infections. They're telling about lower respiratory infections, and one is they're telling about respiratory failure. In lower respiratory infections, they are saying 30-day mortality is over 20%. And in respiratory failure, they are saying about mortality of 27 to 40%. Nothing much. Then they are saying in role of critical care and outreach services, this is important. And most of post-operative deaths occurs more than 5 days after surgery. This is important. Below this photo, 17.10 photo means post-operative deaths occurs 5 days after surgery. 5 days after surgery. This 5 days can be asked. And we already know that high risk means 80% post-op deaths occurs in high risk patients. 80% post-operative deaths occurs in high risk patients. Nothing much. Consent. Here they are saying about consent is the capacity is needed for a patient to give consent, and children are presumed to have capacity at 16 years. At 16 years, the children are presumed to have capacity of consent. The 16 years can be asked. That much, nothing is there. Prem.
The last paragraph, arranging the theater list. In that, who will be the
Nothing is there.
priority?
Nothing is there. Is there anything? I don't find anything.
Last paragraph, you just see the last paragraph. The prioritize the patients. Who will be the prioritizing? Already known points only. Children and diabetes
What
patients.
filter and specially crossing stuff. NSS surgical things. Right. Maybe asked, but nothing much.
Yeah. Nothing much.
There's one point, Rishikesh, I wanted to tell actually about the urea and electrolytes, no investigations.
Yes.
There actually they have given, see, 4 drugs. Okay, the medications which can affect the electrolyte level: steroid, diuretics, digoxin, and NSAID. That they can ask MCQ.
Yes.
Okay,
Ask.
that
This is asked for what?
you didn't tell that time.
Yes. Means
Steroid, diuretics though we know only. Digoxin, steroid, and NSAID we have to remember.
NSAID we know only na. Whenever there is whenever there is kidney involvement, we don't give NSAIDs na. Diclofenac. We can know that.
Okay.
Steroids are also not given. Diuretics and digoxin. That part is this part is very important. This is repeatedly asked. This what we call risk factors for thrombosis is very important. That chart is very important. Risk factors for thrombosis is important.
This also,
And-
this all these 3 tables together, no, 4 tables.
very
This
important.
MET,
Column
ASA,
particularly.
RCRA, and
Yes.
score. That is that page only they'll ask mostly questions.
This is the most important.
Most important
And
page
this is
actually.
also cardiopulmonary exercise testing also asks.
Okay.
They will give values who are high risk patients. They will give MET more than less than 4. They will give VO2 less than 11, like that. They will give. So this part is the most identification of high risk patient is most important part. And this is also asked surgery specific estimates of risk 17.6. High risk patient, who are high risk patients, who are low risk surgeries, who are high risk
One
surgeries.
more thing you told, no, Rishikesh. The second 17.7 table actually it is important actually. Unadjusted and adjusted mortality, that rank will differ actually. The only percentage we need not remember. That rank we have to remember. First it is the vascular if unadjusted. If adjusted comes, it is thoracic. First vascular comes last. 5th it is. First 5 at least we should know.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Usually first usually.
Yes. Adjusted is vascular. Adjusted is thoracic. Yes.
That we should know. That is important only.
Yes.
Anyway, box only they last questions.
Yes, box only. Yes. This chapter is important.
That's why. Rest other 4 chapters are not that much important actually. Daycare and all, nutrition is bit important. Who is taking tomorrow?